This week we seize the day as our Alaska cruise sets sail from Seward and heads south. Our first stop is Hubbard Glacier, where Mother Nature leaves a big impression on our fellow travelers.
It's just amazing. The scale of this is outrageous.
Then we make our way to the Klondike Gold Country and travel on one of the world's most scenic railroads. And then we're in Juneau, where we fly high to a salmon cookout and discover a surprising local landmark. Then we finish in Ketchikan, where a survivor of the deadliest catch now takes tourists to a place where eagles soar. And I'm talking lots of eagles. It all begins right now. Hi everybody, and welcome back to Alaska on our Celebrity Cruise Line sponsored Land and Sea Tour. Now we're coming off some of the best couple of days we've ever had and following it up with one of the best weeks we've ever had here on the sea. The weather's changed just a little bit here on the Hubbard Glacier Bay, but you know what? Little chilly, little drizzle, no problem, because the beauty will keep you warm. Oh yes, the beauty, something that seemed to be our constant companion on this trip. Certainly was the case as we made an evening departure from Seward, our sea cruise now underway. Departure day is always an exciting time, watching the land slowly pass by and disappear behind you. And of course, everyone's anxious to explore their new home for the next week, feeling like a celebrity ascending that grand staircase, feeling good in the heated pool and spas with good old dad, and of course, shopping, shopping, shopping. After sailing overnight, passengers awoke to find our ship on a northerly course through Disenchantment Bay, which would soon become an enchanted place as Hubbard Glacier slowly came into view. As we got closer, passengers started gathering to get a prime viewing spot. Some folks opted to watch from inside, but for the most part, passengers went with the natural elements to view this natural wonder. Some folks even got a quick massage so they were loosened up for the day ahead. David Egan was certainly ready as he joined his wife and some friends on their veranda.
It's magnificent, it really is. And we come from New England, so we've seen something of hills and something of snow and that sort of thing, but just nothing on this scale at all.
Hubbard Glacier is one of more than 600 named glaciers in Alaska, and it's considered the largest tidewater glacier in North America, stretching 76 miles upstream well into Canada's Yukon territory. It's also one of the few glaciers that's getting thicker and advancing from its distant origins. Because it is so alive, cruise ships can't get any closer than about a mile, maybe just a little bit less, for safety reasons. A big surprise was hearing that the face of Hubbard Glacier is 6 miles wide, and some of the ice you're looking at is 500 years old.
But the ice in the interior valleys where this comes from can be over 1 million years old.
As you can hear, Celebrity Cruises provides a live narrator on board, which is great because he answers a lot of questions that you're curious about, like why are some parts of the glacier so dirty? Well, the answer comes from volcanoes out in the Aleutian Islands.
And so every time one of those volcanoes goes off, which happens every year or so, a layer of ash is deposited on the ice. In fact, the top of the glacier has that kind of dirty brownish color, and most of that is from volcanic ash. Then subsequent snowfalls will bury that, and then more so after that.
Hubbard Glacier was named for Gardner Hubbard. He was founder and first president of the National Geographic Society. Well, Hubbard should be mighty proud of his namesake glacier, and I can guarantee you our fellow passengers were left mighty impressed by this bigger-than-life experience.
Oh, it's fantastic. It really is. It's certainly a once-in-a-lifetime sort of opportunity, to be sure.
Our Alaska adventure continues, and when we come back, we're riding the White Horse and Yukon Railroad. It's one of the signature attractions of Alaska and loaded with history to match the scenery. We'll be right back. Our next stop on this amazing trip brings us to Skagway and the White Pass and Yukon Railroad. I've always considered this narrow gauge train to be one of the signature excursions on any Alaska cruise, and how about this for celebrity service? The train comes right up to your ship. The first couple of miles of the ride seem pretty easy as we pull through town and then start heading to the mountains. Surrounded by snow-covered peaks and rushing waterfalls, the White Pass and Yukon route is a real tribute to the men who seemingly did the impossible. It wasn't just about laying track, it was also about blasting their way to the top. 450 tons of TNT to build 2 tunnels, plus an explosion of other places where the TNT was the only way to eke out enough room on the side of the mountain for the track. Putting it all in perspective is easy. Just look up at the train ahead of us or look down at the train below us to really get a scope of this massive engineering feat.
The summit trains travel just over 20 miles one way from sea level in Skagway up to nearly 3,000 feet at the top of White Pass. Round trip, which is what the majority of our passengers take, is the summit train. So, you get about 40 miles of a train ride. Probably the most dramatic section of the railroad, so that's what people come to see.
And one of the things that's always pointed out by the train's narrator is this now abandoned bridge, which gives some added insight into why this railroad was designated an International Civil Engineering Landmark in 1994. And that's an honor also shared with the Eiffel Tower and the Statue of Liberty. The summit train takes us just past the international border between Alaska and British Columbia. This is where the engines switch ends for the trip back, where there's a lot of waving between trains, and where we met Melissa Goldenhirsch, the flip-flop wearing organizer of this 3-generation trip.
We like it. It was good for the entire family to do. We were traveling with a 1-year-old as well as a 5-year-old, so we needed something a little more not so adventurous for the kids, and it's great. The views are beautiful, and he has his binoculars, so the little one's checking things out, wanting to see a bear. But yeah, the train is great.
The trip back down to Skagway is every bit as beautiful as the ride up. A little bit different perspective too, so there's always something new to see. No question, this is an easy, comfortable excursion that belies the near impossible odds of making the deadly trip to Yukon Gold, and a train built by tens of thousands of men. That's why we stopped into the National Park Service office when we got back to Skagway. Large posters and well-written narratives really help bring the history alive.
Tens of thousands of people who had never been to Alaska came here to try to make it to the gold fields of the Yukon, which were about 500 miles further north. And it was a scene of chaos and pandemonium as they got to what was essentially an unestablished valley and tried to make their journey begin here in what would later become Skagway.
It's easy to see why Skagway is such a popular stop during the summer cruise season. A trip back in history with all the modern conveniences that kind of makes you feel like you've struck vacation gold. Well, as you can see, we have arrived safe and sound here in the capital city of Alaska, Juneau, of course. And this is going to be a great stop because we're going to get on a float plane, take off and go over, I guess, about 5 different glaciers, and then land at a fishing lodge for a little salmon. So stick with us. There are only 2 ways in and out of Juneau. You either come by plane or by boat. And that's just one of the things that makes this one of the most unique state capitals in the country. Of course, we feel we picked the best way because coming in by cruise ship gives you a chance to see the surrounding areas of Juneau as the captain navigates his way through Gastineau Channel. And of course, the Celebrity Millennium was the perfect viewing platform as we eased into port and all of Juneau was laid out in front of us. There's no shortage of great excursions in Juneau, and our crew decided to trade in our sea legs for a little fly time. Literally taking off in the shadow of our ship. Wings Airways is one of the big floatplane operators here, and Pilot Dan, we think, is one of the best. And how fun it was to use the ocean as a runway, watching the floats easily let go of the water as some impressive sights came into view. Our 25-minute flight took us over 5 different glaciers, a small window into the estimated 100,000 glaciers in Alaska. Our trip out ended at Taku Glacier, where we gently floated down to the water and our destination, the historic Taku Glacier Lodge. And where else would a bear be part of the official welcome committee? At first, we didn't think she wanted her picture taken, but that talk to the hand gesture was just really about a big itch, which did get scratched off the to-do list.
Lois has been coming around here for maybe 15 years. She's had a couple of batches of cubs now, some of which we even recognize as regulars also. But Lois is, yeah, just a real sweet older female bear who is just easygoing and likes to kind of put on a show, sits around and even naps in the sun sometimes around here.
By the way, there's always somebody keeping an eye on Lois, especially at lunchtime when the fresh salmon goes on the grill, the fire searing in the natural flavors, and of course, the good old omega-3. And if the smoke and smell isn't enough to tell you lunch is ready, the international sound of "come and get it" certainly will.
Taku Lodge was built in 1923 by a doctor who had moved to Alaska. It was kind of his dream to build a hunting lodge in the middle of nowhere, and that's just what he did.
The lodge has a nice comfy feeling, and it's just perfect for getting to know your fellow travelers like Bob from Florida, whose friends told him about this excursion.
They said, you have to get on a plane and come and see the glacier and what have you. And we looked and we saw salmon, and I said, all right, let's do it.
After lunch, there was just enough time to take a short nature hike around the grounds, which was sort of a perfect dessert after a big lunch. And then it was time to head back down to the dock and get airborne for the ride back to town. Once again, Pilot Dan made a perfect splashdown right next to our ship, and we had just enough time to go pay a visit to one of our old favorites, Tracy's King Crab Shack. Things have sure changed since we first met Tracy in 2012 when her crab shack really was a shack. She's a bit of a legend now in these parts, works as hard as ever as you can see her behind the counter, and her shack is now a very prominent building on the waterfront. Now, I have to be honest with you, I wasn't 100% sure Tracy would remember us after 4 or 5 years, but guess what? She not only remembered us, she immortalized me with this little poster. 2 legends of the travel industry, Rick Steves from PBS and good old Dan Davis from the AAA High Roads.
Hey, Dan. Hi, welcome back.
It was good to catch up, but customers were waiting, and Tracy didn't want any of them getting crabby while they waited. And of course, we needed to get back to the ship. But once again, we were leaving a port with lots of good memories and another great day on our Alaska adventure. Coming up next, we're in Ketchikan and one of the best excursions we've ever taken. We're on board one of the legends of the television show Deadliest Catch. It's a fascinating story we'll have when we come back. Ketchikan is called Alaska's first city because its southern location makes it the first city you come to when traveling north from the lower 48. Of course, if you're on a southbound cruise like we were on the Celebrity Millennium, it's the last city. But whether you're coming or going, Ketchikan is always a great port, and now it has another great new excursion, the Aleutian Ballad. A 107-foot veteran of the dangerous and deadly waters of the Bering Sea.
Let's get some crab here on board.
It's a new life for the boat and a new life for Captain David Lathine after 40 years out to sea. He converted this legendary boat into a passenger vessel to show visitors a little bit about the huge Alaska fishing industry and the thousands of people who work in it. The mere fact this boat is still afloat is simply amazing.
For 2 days, this boat rode out in the Bering Sea in a massive storm, 60-foot waves, gusting 170 miles an hour with nobody on board. The crew had abandoned the ship, and they got saved by another boat, thank God.
Crew members have their own terrifying stories of the sea, but this trip isn't a scared straight experience. It's just fun and a fascinating look at an industry few of us know anything about.
Who wants to see a king crab? Isn't that something? This is a brown king crab.
I can't believe I'm doing this. Oh, he's moving. Yeah, look at that. He's fuming.
We got both kinds now.
And that's a box crab?
That's a box crab. Check this out. This is another cool feature. Their eyes are actually right here. See those? Those two little eyes? But if you turn them this way, you can see these fake eyes, these fox eyes right there.
Yeah.
And so that way, if a predator rolls up on him, boom, it looks like the head of a much larger creature. But really, it's just a crab.
Now, if you've watched The Deadliest Catch on the Discovery Channel, this boat might have a familiar name. That's because the Aleutian Ballad almost sank again on TV in Season 2.
So after they'd filled the boat with king crab on the way back into Dutch Harbor, the Aleutian Ballad took a 60-foot massive rogue wave over the side that almost capsized the boat. Only this time, as she went onto her side, all those big king crab couldn't get out of the hole, and they stayed in the bottom of the boat, and that weight brought the Aleutian Ballad back up.
Their DNA's nothing like anything we have on the planet.
In some ways, there's almost a sense of relief among the crew that they have found safe harbor, showing people from around the world what Alaskan fishing is all about. And they do it with plenty of laughs.
Oh, geez, here we go. We got something? Yes. Look at the size. Yeah. Get that thing. Holy. Oh.
There are a lot of firsts on this trip for me, holding a crab for sure, but even more, seeing a swarm of American bald eagles.
We are on a native reservation. We're on the island of Annette. The Tsimshian natives over there that live in the town of Metlakatla were gracious enough to enter into a partnership with us. On that island, they have a massive herring fishery that comes here in southeast Alaska every summer. And these eagles feast on those herring. And so they're all over the shoreline.
All over the shoreline. And what a grand finale to our Celebrity Cruises land and sea tour that covered more than 2,000 miles, beginning in Fairbanks on our fully escorted land tour, then seaward through the Inside Passage, and finally sailing safely under the Lions Gate Bridge and into our final port, Vancouver Harbor. Today's show was sponsored in part by Celebrity Cruises.
And let me tell you, it is frightening. Oh, that didn't make sense. All right, give me another one. I can do better than that.
Just pick it up and not over.
I'll just do it again. We got some train here.